Welcome, welcome. You are listening to the Drink a Little podcast where we talk about exploring the world of wine and spirits while not letting it take over your life. My name is Kelly Doherty. I'm a joyful child of God and a certified life coach. I'm also a wine educator and a wine and spirits brand designer. I'll show you how you can navigate your relationship with alcohol and how that mindset spills over into the rest of your life. We will learn about the world of wine and spirits together, all while bolstering your confidence that you can have boundaries around alcohol and live your most amazing life. Welcome to episode number 8, Cabinet Riesling from Mosel, Germany. And this is called a steep slope. And how this works is we taste a little first and we see where that leads us in the world of managing our mind and creating intentionality around drinking. And today we'll do a little taste of the 2021 Romerhof Cabernet Riesling from Mosel, Germany, and find out how that wine leads us into a discussion on the steep slopes of our feelings. And what I love, we're just going to jump right into this tasting. What I love about Rieslings from this area is that they're always so fresh. I mean, this is just a gorgeous wine. It's got citrus, peach, some sort of flower. Let's go with white flowers. And it's juicy and crisp, but not cloying. And this is 8% alcohol. So they created it in a semi-sweet style, which is perfect when you don't want that full-bodied, high alcohol wine. And reading on the back of this Romerhof label is made by a female winemaker with over 400 years of winemaking in her family. Well, we can only dream, can't we? So, German wine labels are a little confusing, and I use the word cabinet in the opening, and that is in gold under the word Riesling on this label. And that's not part of this brand, Romerhof. It's part of the German classification system of wines that's based on quality and sugar levels. So Cabernet is higher quality than a table wine, but it's really the most delicate and light bodied in this classification. It has some sweetness, but there's also very high acidity. So it is a very balanced wine. And I've chosen this Mosel Riesling today because you have to picture where this wine is grown. It's around the Mosel River in Germany. It's a relatively thin river, meandering with slopes that are incredibly steep along the sides of this river, and they're made out of slate. So sometimes you can see chunks of slate sticking out of the hillside, that stuff that they make your high school chemistry table out of, sticking out of this hillside. And they're really steep slopes, like more than 45 degrees on some of them. And of course, the best vineyards are south facing and really, really steep. But there are some vineyards where the harvesters actually have to wear harnesses to keep them stable on the hillside while they're harvesting so they can harvest efficiently and safely. And it reminded me of all the steep slopes in our lives. So we all have them, but whenever I hit a steep slope that may seem daunting, I think about high school. Yes, high school. I ran cross country in high school and I was terrible, very bad. But I remember our home trail of the 5K ended going straight up a hill at the very end. It was so wrong and so cruel. And I remember my mom came to the end of one of the races, I think maybe one of the only ones that I ever placed in. And I must have looked so tired and sweaty. She thought I was one of the last people. And I was like, "Nope, that's just how we look when we run a 5K that ends going straight up a hill." And I thought about the reasons that I placed that day. And other than general stubbornness of keep going, which I have in spades, I remember our coach saying, don't look at the top of the hill. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. It doesn't matter how slippery the hill is, doesn't matter how high the hill is, and it doesn't matter what other people are doing. We're doing our work individually and we're putting one foot in front of the other. Sometimes that seems too simple, but it comes up in my subconscious sometimes. And in the case of these harvesters on the Mosel River hillsides, they're in a harness and they're guided to take their one step at a time, one cluster at a time, focus one basket at a time, just putting one foot in front of the other. And so I'm going to jump from high school to real life. And I do try to generally keep it pretty light and joyful around here. And yet, not all life has to offer is light and joyful. So I wanted to touch on the steep slopes of life because I see that some of the over drinking that goes on is because we're avoiding dealing with the reality of some of the steep slopes in our lives. And until this episode, I haven't shared how I became a coach. And I will share what I can for the purpose of showing how we can actually feel our feelings and not pour them entirely into a glass. So, several years ago, the love of my life passed away suddenly. And this absolute tragedy created so many feelings in my body for so long. I'm talking years, and just feelings I couldn't control. I couldn't have dinner with friends and not cry. And I eventually got comfortable with myself and my own feelings, but it really doesn't make other people feel super comfortable. But I got comfortable by allowing the feelings and accepting where I was at. I grew to appreciate that the grief moved through me and left a mess of vulnerable openness, but it also created the most compassion and most love I've ever felt in my life towards myself and towards those around me. Because up until that point, I was very cut and dry, very had my feelings in a box. And it's a steep slope losing your favorite person on the planet. There is no sugarcoating it. And those slopes happen to all of us in different ways, everyone's life at different times. And you know this. It's how we choose to respond that makes all the difference. So I chose to get coached a lot, to feel my feelings a lot, and eventually become a coach. So I would argue that as far as feeling our feelings, all of our emotions actually have to go through a full cycle to be including that acceptance to be released from our body. That's the healthy response. But most of us are not taught how to do this. We haven't tuned into our bodies for the day-to-day natural processing of feelings that come up. So when the steep slope events happen, what we've trained for is to ignore our feelings. And sometimes we've trained ourselves to blot out those feelings, sometimes with over drinking, sometimes with other things. And what I learned in accepting those feelings of grief and sorrow and a lot of mixed feelings of overwhelm and despair, not that there weren't joyful moments with family and friends, of course, but a lot of mixed feelings. But they were all there, whether I was willing to accept them or not. And arguing with reality, which really should be its own game show, arguing with reality doesn't actually work. And a lot of people like to compare their lives, but there's no comparing what you're going through with what I've gone through or what anyone else is going through at any point. That comparison is not helpful. Nobody knows how steep your slope is, how much you're holding up and how much you're not holding up. You know, and if you're arguing with reality, You know, if you're blotting out that internal knowing with alcohol, whatever you're going through, this is your reality at the moment, but it is not a prediction of the future. And it doesn't have to be like this forever. A lot of times when we're denying or resisting our feelings, it's because we're afraid of never being able to come back from our feeling if we go there. It's really scary. I get it. And just remember that any feeling is actually a physical vibration in your body, and it can't actually hurt you. But what we're afraid of is not being able to come back from that feeling. And when we are thinking that, we often look to the external things to distract us, to push that feeling away. Alcohol is only one of those things. Food, shopping, gambling, sex, video games, all the distractions. And there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these things when they're in balance. But when those things are in service of trying to change your reality or ignore your reality, you literally stay at the bottom of the hill. You have that harvest bucket and you don't put any grapes in it. And I know that feeling your feelings is the way to get moving up that hill. And just one step at a time. I'd like to offer that. I know there are some steep slopes, and the slopes of the Mosel, where some of the most amazing wines are grown. Your slopes can be where your amazing character is grown. And you're not stuck. Realize you have the harness. In my worldview, God gave me a harness and let me figure out how to put it on, let me make a mess, let me figure out how to harvest, how to get up when I inevitably tumble down the hill because I put the harness wrong, obviously. But pick up those grapes right in front of you. Don't worry about the whole row or the whole hillside. Put one foot in front of the other and do just the next best thing for your life. I trust that you can figure out what that next step is. And I trust that you can figure out if I'm the person that can help you. I trust that you can figure out the resources that you deserve. You are held by a harness. You are a masterpiece. You are in progress and messy just like me, I hope. Accept and allow those feelings in your time. But try to be present one vintage at a time, right where you are from today. You don't have to pick the grapes any faster. You're perfect just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. And that's what I have for you today, my friends. And I have a feeling that next week we'll be tasting a Cabernet that I picked up in Mexico. Yes, it's Mexico and red wine. So I will see you right here next Tuesday. And if you're climbing that steep hill and want to take anything I teach to a deeper level, I do have a one-on-one coaching program tailored to your needs where we cover how to stop over drinking, how to love yourself for all the right reasons, and emotional well-being. Go to kellydoherty.com/cheers to learn more. That's KELLYDOHERTY.com/cheers. I'll see you next week.